Hello humans, and welcome back to another Fire Emblem Engage video. Originally this was going to be a guide about the best bond ring pairings in the game, but the more research I did and the further I got in my script, the more obvious it became that these bond rings are extremely flexible and can work in a variety of scenarios. So, in the spirit of being thorough, I'm going to cover all 12 non-DLC Engage rings, and at the end of each segment I'll give a couple recommendations on what I think some fun combos for them can be, if that's even relevant. As usual, it would be most appreciated if you'd help me wage war against the YouTube algorithm by leaving a like and a comment. Also, let me know what kind of stuff you'd like to hear me cover in regards to Engage. I still have a lot of ideas in the pipeline, but I always like to hear from my viewers in regards to what you guys want to see and hear about, so yeah, have at it, let me know. Alright, I'm going to start in chronological order, and who else is it going to be other than everyone's favorite Smash Bros. Character, Marth. Marth is an extremely easy ring to use on any offensive unit. In terms of stat boosts, at the max level of 20, he gives you plus 3 strength, plus 4 dex, and plus 4 speed. A lot of the emblem rings have 5 unique skills, some of them will have 4, and I'll touch on those later on, but Marth has 5, 3 of which are sync skills for equipping the rings, and 2 of which are engage only. He has Perception, which gives you plus 15 avoid on initiating combat, and 1 extra point in avoid for every 4 speed you actually have. This goes to plus 30 on initiation at max upgrade when you unlock his bond level cap. Break Defenses performs an extra attack at 50% of the damage if you break the enemy first, and Unyielding, which at max upgrade heals 40% of your total HP at the start of the turn if you're under 40% of your total HP in the first place. His passive engage skill is Divine Speed, which performs an extra attack at 50% damage in combat. If a covert unit uses this, it poisons the enemy, and if a dragon unit uses it, then it heals you equal to the damage dealt by the extra attack alone. He also has Lodestar Rush in his active engage attack, and it does 7 consecutive hits at 30% damage, totaling to 210%. If you're a dragon, you get 2 extra hits, you get 1 extra hit as a backup class, and if that wasn't enough, mystical class units get 7 hits, but they calculate with magic damage so it's usable even on them. As a general rule of thumb for this video, engage weapons aren't really anything special, so I'll only make note of them if there's anything that stands out. In Marth's case, his real niche is Mercurius, which you get at Bond 10, which gives you double the EXP in battle, making it very valuable for early game SP grinding and catching up units in general. Marth's skill inheritance is also nothing too special. He basically just gives you a lot of avoid-based skills, so unless you're trying to dodge tank, you can ignore these for the most part. He also gives you sword proficiency. In terms of recommendations, Marth is very solid on just about any unit. He's not fantastic on anyone, but he's pretty average. He's great on Alriiiiight in the early game for the ability to absolutely nuke with Lodestar Rush, but you can honestly put him on any unit and he works. There aren't any specific combos for him, he's just flat out good. The second emblem ring we get is Sigurd, and this one is basically just move as far as possible in one ring. Right out the gate, Sigurd gives you a permanent +1 move, but at max bond level he adds on up to +4 dex, +4 defense, and +3 build as well. Sigurd also gives you what I'd say is the most important skill in the game. Canter. This is basically the Pot of Greed of Fire Emblem, because what does it do? It allows you to move up to 2 more spaces after your actions, and you basically want it on every unit. His other 2 skills are Headlong Rush, which grants freeze immunity, and Momentum, which gives you 1 extra damage per space moved. Momentum is pretty nice, but I found Headlong Rush fairly niche outside of specific applications. His first engage skill just adds on 5 more move, and is what really makes Sigurd insane. For cavalry units, they get 2 more on top of that, and dragons get 1 more. Covert units also get a little bonus in that it lets them treat all terrain as if it's normal. His engage attack is Override, which I struggle to really find many applications for, to be honest. I'm sure you've seen a lot of footage running around of people stacking incredibly long and fun override chains, but in reality, you're pretty much never going to be able to do this, so this skill is also kind of niche, and odds are you'd prefer to kill normally over using this. It does give certain classes some extra effects though. Dragons get 20% more damage, Chi-Adepts and Armors gain a chance to break enemies, and mystical units gain 25% of their magic damage added onto this. One interesting combo to speak of regarding mystical units is Levin Sword Celine. Since Override can only be used with swords or lances, and Celine is the only mystical class that can use swords, she has a little bit of a niche with Override that can be pretty strong if you line it up properly. Otherwise, Override kinda mid. In terms of skill inheritance, he gives you flat hit rate and lance power, which gives more lance attack, as well as sword and lance proficiencies in that department. These are okay, but honestly the real gem here is Canter. You should put this on everyone that you can before chapter 10, and then you'll add it on everyone that you can later on as soon as you get the chance. For recommendations, once again, this is a pretty non-specific ring. You can just put it on whoever you want to give a ton of movement and some build to. Louis is a nice early game pick I've seen, but I put mine on Ivy and I never really looked back because her flying mobility, added movement, and range with Thunder Tomes came in handy quite a bit, and he helped that. The third ring we get is Celica. Celica is a magic-based ring that gives +3 strength, +5 magic, and +4 res at max bond level, as well as access to tome and sword proficiency before level 10. The ring gives you access to some interesting skills early game. The sync skills are Holy Stance, which reflects 10% of the damage taken from corrupted enemies back at them, Resonance, which takes away some HP in exchange for some added flat damage during combat, and Favorite Food, which lets you eat one of those packed lunches to fully restore your engage meter. In terms of engage skills, you get 2 active skills here. Echo lets you split your attack into 2 50% hits to attack 2 separate enemies if you want. This increases to 2 60% hits if it's on a mystical unit, and increases your attack range by 1 if you're a dragon. Warp Ragnarok is probably the most infamous Celica skill because it lets you teleport all the way across the map and do a big hit against an enemy. It can be pretty clutch in the early game, but to me it fell off big time in the late game. Dragons, like Echo, get an extra +1 range on the attack itself, while Cavalry and Flyers get an extra 2 and 5 warp distance respectively, and, like Echo, mystical units just get 20% more damage. Celica's weapons are nothing special, but it is worth mentioning that she does let you heal with Recover, and do some extra damage to Corrupted with Seraphim. In terms of her skill inheritance, I think the only thing that's really noteworthy is the Favorite Food skill, since it only costs 200 SP. It's pretty cheap and lets any unit fully restore their engage meter once per battle with the packed lunch you get, so yeah, if you want it, inherit it on the unit who you want to engage spam and call it a day. Otherwise, there are bigger fish in the sea for SI purposes. We just mentioned Canter, and there is more to come. As for the recommendations, once again, Celica is just generally good on any mage. If you want to fiddle around with the Warp Ragnarok range, Ivy could be a fun unit to have her on, as well as Hortensia, but honestly, I found this ring pretty underwhelming when it came back late game, and I'd probably take Dire Thunder over it if you have the Olwen ring. Our fourth bond ring is Micaiah, and this is where things start to get really juicy. Micaiah at max bond level gives you +4 magic, +5 res, and +6 luck, as well as access to knife, tome, and staff proficiencies. However, her real utility lies in the skills she provides. Her sync skill Cleric gives any unit immediate access to up to C rank staves, and as you level this up, it can go all the way to A rank in the later bond levels. This lets any unit become a staff bot and is extremely good, even if her availability isn't great. Aside from that, she just gets silence immunity, which is self-explanatory, and healing light, which heals her for 50% of whatever she heals allies for. Her engage skills are what make her broken though. Augment gives all of your staves an AoE effect, which means you can warp, rescue, and rewarp up to 5 units at once. But not only that, it also increases staff range by 5, 6 if you're a dragon, so we have all the weapons necessary to completely skip maps in their entirety. Not only that, but the fact that you can use the Entrap Staff to just yoink 5 enemies into you is hilariously funny, though this unfortunately does not work on bosses. Micaiah also has Great Sacrifice, which has been famously making the rounds for being an EXP grinding machine alongside Tiki's Divine Blessing. It fully drains your HP down to 1 to heal all allies up to the max, and is basically a panic button. Not as commonly used outside of power leveling, but it's there if you need it. Otherwise, Micaiah, like her predecessors, also has nothing really useful in terms of skill inheritance, and even her weapons are pretty unimpressive outside of being able to fill the niche of Nosferatu tanking. There are no early game units with innate staff proficiency, so you won't be able to fully utilize her unless you have someone in a class with B rank staves or higher until the late game, so I don't really have any specific recommendations for her either. Use her on a unit you want to power level or function as a healer, and she works very well no matter what. Bond ring number 5 is one that gets a lot of hate and pretty much very well known to be underwhelming, so I'll make this pretty quick, hopefully. At max bond level, Roy gives +10 HP, +6 strength, and +3 res, as well as only giving access to sword proficiency. The weird thing about Roy is that he only has 2 sync skills, which are Holdout, which lets you survive a fatal hit above a certain HP threshold, and it's basically the miracle skill, and Advance, which lets you move 1 extra space to close the distance on an enemy that is 2 spaces away and attack them. When engaged, he gets Rise Above, which increases your level by 5 and your stats accordingly. I believe the stat increase is based off average growth rates, but correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, his active skill is Blazing Lion, which is an AoE attack that creates a fire under your enemies as well. I'm gonna cut to the chase and just say his SI is underwhelming aside from a few extremely niche combos with Holdout and Nosferatu tanking with Micaiah if you want to waste your engage turns with that, or his better combo being using him with a tank because of his HP and strength increases as well as his level boost. Rise Above gives armored units an extra 5 HP and cavalry an extra 1 move, so using him with a general or a great knight doesn't sound like too bad of an idea. Otherwise, this ring is below average. Use it on whoever needs the SP. Following Roy, we have another ring that is also in discussion for the worst ring in the game, and that's Leif. At max bond, Leif gives plus 7 HP, plus 3 defense, and plus 5 build, but the best part of Leif is all the proficiencies he gives access to before level 10, which are axe, bow, knife, staff, lance, and sword. I find it weird they didn't add tomes to this, considering he could use them as a Master Knight, or arts because we don't have an early game arts proficiency ring, but it is what it is. Like Roy, he only has 2 sync skills, Arm's Shield, which decreases damage dealt to you if you have weapon advantage, and Vantage, which lets you go first if you're under a certain HP threshold. His engage skills are also very middling. Adaptable changes your weapon to counter with the best weapon available, which I believe changes it to have weapon triangle advantage as far as I can tell. This isn't great because, aside from his killer axe, his engaged weapons just aren't good, and quadruple hit is a nice nuke in the early game, but by the time you get him back in the late game, it's not very strong either. Leif has pretty good SI in the form of Vantage, and I guess the added build boost ones can be okay, but other than these and his weapon proficiencies, like Roy, just put him on whoever needs the SP or the build boost. Now we're at the portion of the video where the rings you get will stay with you for the rest of the game. This gives these rings an automatic boost in their rating because of how consistent and dependable they are. Lucina is the first one you get, and it's an excellent bond ring. At max bond, she gives plus 5 dexterity, plus 4 speed, and plus 6 luck, as well as access to sword and bow proficiency. Her skills are also pretty cracked. She gets the sync skill Dual Strike, which turns her into a backup unit and allows the person equipping her to perform chain attacks, as well as the skill Dual Assist, which has a 35% chance of performing a chain attack as long as she's in range to reach the enemy, regardless of where she's standing on the map. This works with a 11 sword or ranged weapons as well, by the way. She also gains dual support, which gives avoid bonuses depending on the support level with adjacent allies. However, Lucina's true potential, and I think this is kind of untapped, and it lies in her engaged skills. I really learned to appreciate this from my buddy Verve's LTC, which is a run he's been doing on his channel for Fire Emblem Engage Maddening, so I'll leave a link in the description to that. But Bonded Shield is her first active skill, and if used with Alriiiiiit, this gives 90% chance to make an enemy's first attack do 0 damage on adjacent allies. This is nuts because it works for the entire turn and is completely unconditional. If you use it with a Chi Adept, it has a 100% chance, and any unit protecting a unit of the same type as them also gets a 100% chance bonus. Otherwise, it's just a flat 80% on all units no matter what, which is still insane. If, for some reason, you also want to attack with her, she has the skill All for One, which invites all units within 2 spaces to participate as part of a chain attack. This is funny because heroes with Brave Assist go twice in these as well, so you can get some really crazy stacks. Lucina also has the bow Parthia, which, like Marth's Mercurius, gives double EXP, but otherwise the weapons are still nothing special, and skill inheritance-wise she leaves a lot to be desired. Lucina is a great all-rounder for any unit, but I like having her on Alriiiiiit for the absolute bonded shield abuse that she can cheese a lot of damage coming your way with, especially if the unit you're protecting isn't getting doubled anyways. So yeah, use her on Alriiiiiit or your Chi Adept unit and watch your allies become unshakable gods. After Lucina, we have one of the rings in contention for the best ring in the entire game, and yes, it's better than all the DLC ones as well, and that's Lyn. Lyn is absolutely absurd. She gives plus 4 dex, plus 5 speed, and plus 3 res at max bond level, as well as sword and bow proficiency. But Lyn's unreal power lies in her sync skills. She gets Alacrity, which lets you instantly double an enemy before they can attack if you have a certain amount of speed more than them, as well as Speed Taker, which gives you 2 extra speed for the rest of the map with each kill, up to 5 kills for a total of 10 speed. This is nuts because not only does the speed make you dodge more, it also lets you double and trigger Alacrity to completely wipe enemies off the face of the earth before they can do anything to you. In a game that is more player phase focused than any Fire Emblem game I've seen in recent history, this makes this ring incredibly useful. If that wasn't enough, she's also even more busted when she engages, since her Astral Storm, while not having the greatest damage, will let you force aggro almost every boss in the game from a safe distance, or pick off troublesome enemy units like thieves or mages. Covert units get a whopping 10 more range added to this, so put her on a sniper if you want that for maximum efficiency, or a dragon who also gets 5 more distance added. She also gets call doubles, which adds 4 doubles that are adjacent to you, 5 if you're a dragon. These are interesting because they can serve as decoys for enemies to focus down, since enemy AI prioritizes kills, and the decoys only have 1 HP each. They're not a guaranteed target, however, as enemies still will go after your unit if it's near death, but it's some nice tech regardless, and the decoys can perform chain attacks from anywhere on the map as long as your engaged unit attacks, which also helps completely melt boss HP gauges. I guess I should also mention that Lynn's Mulagir bow also has dragon effectiveness, which starts to come in handy in the mid to late game as well. Skill inheritance wise, Lynn is also really good, because Speed Taker is a real gem here, but at a whopping 2000 SP, it can be a steep price to pay. I'd say it's worth it, as it universally helps any unit, kind of like Cantor, and speed is the best stat in this game, so I'd go for it. Lynn might be the best bond ring in the game, and yeah, that's all I have to say about her. It might seem like it's hard to follow a ring like Lynn's, but Ike is next, and I'll assure you that he's really good as well. I dedicated an entire video to an Ike combo that I found really good, so if you want to see a dedicated build and you haven't really seen it yet, I'll leave a link in the description or the little box that's popping up right now on the top right of your screen, so take a look if you want. Ike at max bond level gives plus 7 HP, plus 4 strength, and plus 5 defense, as well as access to axe and sword proficiencies. Ike has some nice sync skills with Reposition, which doesn't need an explanation, and Resolve, providing you with some more defenses when your HP is low, but then we have Demolish, which is kind of strange considering how little use we have for it in the game, but whatever. His Engage skills, though, are insane. Lagoo's Friend gives you a flat 50% damage mitigation no matter what. 60% if you're a dragon, and it's for the entirety of your Engage period, so for 4 turns. And, if that wasn't enough, Great Aether is the gift that keeps on giving. This skill tanks for a turn, and by tanks I mean you're completely immobilized and you don't get to counterattack, and then it creates a massive AoE nuke for all enemies 2 spaces away from you. If you want to effectively use this, just make sure you're equipping a smash weapon when you do, and you'll see damage numbers and enemies dropping like you've never seen before. Ike also gets Wrath as a sync skill on top of these, but you have to clear his Paralog first, and this gives you 1% crit with each HP you've lost up until a total of 30. Ike's Reposition skill is very nice for skill inheritance, and it's really cheap at 200 SP, and obviously so is Wrath at the steep cost of 2000 SP, but this skill is amazing for any offensive-based units and pairs really well with skills like Vantage and units like Panette. The thing with Ike is that this ring feels a bit misunderstood to me. A lot of people feel like they should put him on tanks because of Resolve and because of his flat plus 5 to defense and the additional plus 5 that Ragnell gives, or I think it's Irvin. It's Irvin. But this is absolutely not the best way to go. Put him on your highest attack unit, give them enough HP to survive, engage, and Great Aether with your strongest weapons, and watch the world burn. Again, I won't go too into detail here since I already did an entire video on this, but link below. And just like that, the game threw a lot of really strong offensive rings at us just now, so naturally it's time for a more utility and support-based ring, and none in the game are better than Byleth. Byleth's ring is just beautiful. It gives plus 3 to magic, plus 3 to speed, and plus 12 to luck, as well as sword and, finally, arts proficiency. Byleth is the ultimate support bot, and that's reflected in his skills. Divine Pulse is interesting and it's different because it can let you land a hit that you would otherwise miss. But back to reality, Mentorship gives you and adjacent allies 20% extra experience, and Lost and Found finds an item to increase support points between you and an adjacent ally. But like a lot of the rings on this list, his main power lies in the engaged skills. Goddess Dance is Byleth's big power move, which grants all adjacent units an additional turn, including dancers, and it's a nice reference to one of the battalions from Three Houses. This can really give you a huge power boost when used properly, and is one of, if not the strongest engaged skills in the entire game. His other active skill is Instruct, which gives a flat stat boost to all allies within 2 spaces. In order to spare myself, and you guys, from reading out the entire list, I'm just going to show the variations on screen so you can pause and look at them in your own time. Skill inheritance wise, Mentorship is obviously really powerful at the cost of only 250 SP, and Divine Pulse can be kind of useful for how low cost it has, but I'd recommend saving up for other skills, honestly. Byleth can work well on any unit, but if you want to really make use of his Instruct, then putting him on your Alriiiiiit is the way to go for the Dragon unit bonus. Personally, I used him on a flyer for the mobility, like Chloe, but again, it's a support ring, use it on whoever you like. Next is one that I think is one of the most underappreciated rings in the entire game, and that's Corrin. Corrin is a utility ring that gives a massive plus 15 HP, plus 4 magic, and plus 3 res at max level, as well as sword proficiency. Corrin has a really unique set of skills that aid you in battle, such as Dragon Vein, which has varying effects based on movement type, shown on screen now, Draconic Hex, which debuffs the enemies you attack by 4 to each stat, Quality Time, which heals ally and increases support when you end turn next to them, and Pair Up, which makes you immune to enemy chain attacks. Her engage skills are also pretty good, with Dreadful Aura pinning units and not letting them move, as well as Torrential Roar, which does damage to enemies in a straight line while turning spaces under them to water tiles. Corrin gives you a lot of very good skill inheritance options as well, mostly Draconic Hex and Pair Up. Both of these are really steep for 2000 SP each, so inheriting Hex on your offensive units and Pair Up on your tanks and bruisers will be an investment, so make sure this is the final build that you want to do before you do so. In terms of recommendations, I had Corrin on my Thieves because of the ability to generate fog and make use of the covert bonus. But putting her on dragons is also very viable to let them become the avatar and choose any terrain element they want to give you some real flexibility. Also, don't underestimate how good Torrential Roar is on bosses. Manipulating the terrain underneath them while also hitting them with Draconic Hex and Dreadful Aura all at the same time is really strong, and I wish I'd made use of this a lot earlier in my playthrough. Last but not least is the Eirika ring, which I feel is a bit of a misunderstood and underrated ring, and why I chose it to be in the thumbnail along with Panette. Don't worry, I can explain, just trust me. This ring gives plus 3 magic, plus 4 dex, and plus 10 luck at max bond, as well as sword and lance proficiency. However, this ring, unlike the others, has an advantage in that the majority of its power is available without having to engage at all, and that's because of the first skill, Lunar Brace. Lunar Brace takes 20% and later on 30% of an enemy's defense stat, and it just adds it on as flat damage. It's that simple. Gentility, which is paired with Lunar Brace, also makes you take a little bit less damage, making this perfect to put on your glass cannons or units that need a bit more help in the damage department line, such as dagger units, for example. The ring also gives you the option to swap to Ephraim, who gets Solar Brace. This gives 30% damage absorption and lets you deal more damage, but I feel like due to the higher enemy defenses, the flat defense to damage conversion from Lunar Brace outstrips this. When engaged, you get access to Twin Strike, which is basically one hit from Eirika and one from Ephraim that is effective against Corrupted, and it's nothing special, as well as having both brace skills active at the same time. The engage is a tad bit lackluster, and you'll be on the Eirika ring offensively most of the time, but while engaged you get access to the Sieglund, which is a pretty strong sword and effective against the Corrupted, which makes you a killing machine in the maps in the latter segment of the game, which is what makes Eirika really underrated as a ring. Skill inheritance-wise, Eirika doesn't really have much to offer. I'd say Lunar Brace, but it costs 3,000 SP to inherit, and I just don't think it's worth it in comparison to a bunch of the other skills that were already mentioned in this video, especially when you can get Cantor for 1,000 and then any of the other 2,000 skills for the price this is asking for. Now this is the juicy part of this section because in terms of recommendations, Eirika unlocks a lot of options. I already mentioned low strength and dagger units, but an entire weapon type gets validated here, and that's brave weapons. If you have a unit that can reliably quad, or a class that has guaranteed follow-ups like the Halberdier, you will be able to make use of that defense to damage addition on 4 consecutive attacks while using Eirika and doing a lot of damage. Add that on to a unit like Panette, for example, who already has high base attack and gets additional crit rate, and you have a certified killing machine unit without even needing to engage your ring. I used to agree that the ring was pretty much useless, but just because it's not great when it's engaged doesn't mean it's not putting in a lot of work for your units. You just need to find the right niche for it and watch your attackers absolutely melt the units in front of them. To summarize, all of these rings are amazing, but if I were to rate them on a tier list really quickly based on overall power, usefulness, and availability, I'd say Sigurd, Lyn, Byleth, and Micaiah are the cream of the crop for what they offer between active play and skill inheritance options, with Ike, Corrin, Lucina, and Eirika, all being very solid options that provide key skill inheritance and high utility. Some of the best skills in this game to inherit are, first and foremost, Canter from Sigurd, followed by things like Speed Taker from Lyn, Wrath and Reposition from Ike, Pair Up and Draconic Hex from Corrin, and Vantage from Leif, with an honorable mention to Mentorship from Byleth and Favorite Food from Celica if you can afford these. As a rule of thumb, at least in my opinion, most engage weapons are pretty bad and they'll be eclipsed by refined and engraved weapons quickly into the mid-game, and make sure you use your smash weapons or your strongest weapon for your engage attacks for the extra damage. Other than that, I don't really have much to say, so don't forget to leave a like on your way out and let me know in the comments what type of videos you'd like to see from me in the future, and I'll see you all in my next video on Saturday, which is going to be an opinion video and not a guide. Peace!